You are listening to Peak One Sports.
What's going on, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Sports Page on the Peak One Sports Network. I'm Ashton here with Dan. Chris couldn't make it with us today. Work issues, no big deal. And we are here to bring you this week's episode. What's going on, Dan?
How's it going, bro?
Man, I think I'm going to get on a tangent here, and no one's going to disagree with me. But we might be coddling the next generation a little more than we should be. And I get that's how things go. You look at every generation before us, it gets harder and harder and harder. And
Sure.
you know, what's that phrase? Good times make weak men make bad times make strong men, and strong men make good times, or whatever.
Yeah,
There's
easy
just
times.
a cycle. And I feel like
It really is.
I don't coddle my kids a lot. I mean, as a millennial parent, I'm sure I'm pretty rough on my kids, but in essence, I'm probably pretty soft on my kids. But I know I had to go pick up my kid from school because he got stung by a wasp. And, well, he's 6. It's not like,
Sure.
my 15-year-old got stung or whatever.
Yeah. Is he allergic?
No, but this is the first time he ever got stung by a wasp. So,
Sure.
but he got stung at recess. He went to the nurse and then went back to class, but the teacher could tell he was still having issues, so sent him back to the nurse, and she called for us to come pick him up. It's not like it was our idea to go pick him up, but I was like,
Sure.
all right, I'll go pick him up, whatever. And then I was thinking, I feel like if I would have got stung by a wasp at school, my parents would have just said, you're fine. Now,
Right. I would have gotten an ice cube and I would have been sent on my way.
yeah, and I mean,
Yeah,
if my
right.
mom watches this, she'll probably have different ideas of that and say,
Right.
no, you're a baby, or
Grandparents.
something like that. Like, no, you would have,
Right.
whatever. I don't know. I think I exaggerate how hard it was for me being disciplined, although my parents did a great job of disciplining me.
Right.
But I might have exaggerated it at some point. My memory might not be all there, but yeah, that's
Sure.
yeah. Comment down
No,
below. What would you do in that
Yeah.
situation?
No, I mean, it's definitely one of those things. I mean, pretty much like you said, the times have just been changing, but it's one of those things, honestly, kind of like as a coach and everything, it's kind of one of those topics of discussion I feel like I've had a lot. And you kind of talk about, like everybody wants to be a winner, but not everybody wants to do what it takes to win. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And I feel like that's a part of it, just kind of a little bit of a generational thing. Um,
well,
I don't necessarily have any kids or anything, but I've coached my fair share and whatnot. And I kind of agree, I guess, in the
yeah,
sense that like it doesn't feel like kids have the same kind of grit and tenacity to get over an obstacle. Even some of the small ones kind of hinder them up quite a bit. But
well, not to get
you
too
know,
deep
but he's young.
before the cocktail hour, but
Right.
like my wife and I disagree sometimes. I think sometimes she's a little more, a lot more easy on our kids, and we'll go back and forth. I'm not getting into the details. And then I've talked with my brother-in-law about this. He's like, yeah, she's way too easy. And it's like, well, it's not that big a deal if I thought like our kids in the end would be negatively affected by it. Like, yeah, she could be a
Sure.
little more strict. I think we're in that range where most people are pretty good parents. And, whether you spank your kid, don't spank your kid, getting onto those little things, as long as you're within like that range, I can get this on,
Yeah, spectrum. Yeah.
that spectrum where your kid's not going to grow up to be an asshole,
Right.
or your kid's not going to grow up to, resent their parents, beating them or whatever like that.
Right.
I think you're doing okay. And I'm the last person to tell anybody like you should be doing this with your kids. You should be doing that. I've seen how kids, I've grown up with kids that just act terrible. And my parents are like, don't go hang out with them, whatever. And I know them now through social media, and they grew up to be fine.
Right.
Every kid's different. There's not one thing. I mean, it's not like we're doing anything that would, you ask your average person, maybe we're being soft on our kids, but it just depends who you ask, I guess. But
Yeah, but I mean, it's also one of those things like in order to learn patience, like you have to be put in situations where you have to be patient,
exactly. Yeah, I feel like
and
I'm very
and like
patient.
as a parent, like that's kind of your job.
Yeah.
I can also understand, like as a teacher and coach, it can sometimes be hard to like sit back and like let a student or a kid struggle and like, oh man, you want to be there so bad. But I heard this very recently, and I thought this was great. I thought this was a great thing. But being a parent is just like being a coach, uh, in the sense that like you can advocate for the kids, you can teach them, you can show them the right way and everything, but you just can't get on the field. You can't get on the field, coach. It's not your place.
Yeah.
But you
Yeah.
can do everything else for them, but you gotta let the players play.
Yeah. Um, yeah, to an extent, like it's good to let them, deal with stuff like that where they're going to deal with that whether you like it or you can shelter your kids and whatever. But would like to know or like to think that when my kids face something for the first time, whether it's serious or not, that we're there as that protective net. You don't want the first time your kid gets chewed out by somebody to be his boss in his first
Sure.
job and he can't, mentally handle it. Like I'll get
Right.
chewed out at work or whatever. And yeah, it nobody likes to get yelled at, but I've played sports all my life and I know you get yelled at. Okay, whatever. It's, I would tell my wife, like she got upset before about something where, um, I don't even remember, but I brought up the fact like, man, whatever. It's fine. But, when I was in sixth grade, I'm pretty sure I got cussed out by a coach and my wife is like, well, I would be up there yelling at him. I'm like, yeah, that's a normal reaction.
Sure.
Sixth graders probably shouldn't be getting cussed out by their coach. But at the same time, I'm like, I'm fine when I get, cussed out. If anything, it perks me up more. And, there's a reason your boss yells at you or whatever.
Oh yeah.
Sometimes not necessarily, but, um, I don't want our kids to be, living on their own or doing this or that when they experience something like that for the first time. So
Yeah.
that's good when you face adversity in a
Yeah.
situation
Definitely.
and great if you can cry, get over it and you're good, or, just come to your parents and say, man, that sucked. I don't know if I can handle that again. Like, that's okay. We can work on that. Uh,
Yeah.
rather than, but yeah, we're, we're getting off on a big tangent. We could start our
Yeah.
own parenting podcast.
Just love
Uh,
your kids.
yeah, love your kids. Yeah, as long as you treat them with respect, love them, don't beat them, don't just let them
Right.
run
Yeah.
out in the middle of the street. I feel like it's going to be okay, one way or
Yeah.
the other.
They'll be all right. Kids are
Make
resilient.
very, very resilient. Make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel if you're watching on YouTube. Hit the follow button if you're listening on your favorite podcasting app. And this episode is brought to you by Betalytics. Don't bet with your gut. Check out Betalytics and get help making your picks using their AI algorithm. Use promo code PEAK1 for 25% off when you sign up today. Go to Betalytics.com to start betting smarter. Now, we have a little announcement to make about content that's coming up here in about, a week and a half. Super Bowl Sunday, we are going to be hosting a Peak One Super Bowl pregame show. We don't have a big sponsor for it yet, so that may change to the Super Bowl big game pregame show, something like that. Can't use Super Bowl in ads, but right now it's a Super Bowl pregame show. As far as I know, every person, whatever you want to call them, host person, whatever, is going to be on that's involved with Peak One. And we're going to have people jumping on and off, doing, having little bits that they're talking about. You're going to be on there, Dan, Tony, Ross, Chris, Cole, all of
Yeah.
Cole's guys. It's going to be fun. So, and we're going to do that a live
Yeah.
pregame Super Bowl show here on Peak One.
It's gonna be
And
awesome.
yeah, it's going to be great. Definitely tune in and listen. We're going to do it a couple hours before. So even if you can't watch live, you have a chance to watch before the actual Super Bowl starts. And that Super Bowl, as we just saw this past weekend, it's going to be the Chiefs and the 49ers. So no logo controversy. I
No
don't know.
logo controversy.
Unless I've seen a few, because there's been a lot of TikTok influencers, whatever you want to call them, that have been milking this hard. And I saw one say, "Look, guys, we did it. The NFL changed its script because they knew." And I was like, "Come on, man, come on.
I
Just
mean,
just delete your
maybe.
video like
Maybe.
everybody else because you were wrong." Yeah. So, what are your thoughts on this
Honestly,
Super Bowl
it was
matchup?
fun. It was fun leading up to that whole thing with the controversy because it seems so close, especially with the 49ers and the Ravens getting
And
that
you could
first round
even
bye
bring
and
it with
everything. It was like, man,
you could even kind of say it if it was the Lions and the Chiefs because purple, red, and blue. Like I saw that coming from a mile away. I'm like, if the Lions win, it's Lions and Chiefs. They're going to be saying, look, it's purple. It's,
right? Yeah,
but there's no question now. Whether I know this
yeah.
didn't change. If you legitimately thought the NFL was rigged or scripted, um, then this didn't change your mind or anything. You just kind
Oh,
of
for
doubled
sure.
down.
I'm sure if you subscribe to that particular, conspiracy theory or whatever, you're like, I don't think this has sold you on the fact that it's not scripted or anything just yet.
Not that it's
But
not rigged to an extent. I think I've talked about it before. I can buy that. The NFL, Vegas gambling is much more prevalent. And are there situations where refs make some decisions to change not necessarily the outcome of the game intentionally, maybe, but I've seen like, hey, they're going to win anyways. Let them kick a field goal. So, the spread holds up or whatever.
right,
Sure, we can talk that all day. But when you're saying it's scripted, I'm just saying
the whole
there's
season,
too much
yeah,
involved. There's too many components, too many players. Like you're telling me that's the best
yeah, the
kept
way
secret in the world.
everybody would have to be on board and
And the refs
sell
can't
no,
control it that much. Like there's lots of situations where that call cost them the game, but they also had to be at that point. You had to trust them to not be up by 20. You had to put
yeah,
it in the ref's hands. That's what I'm saying. It's not scripted like, WWE or anything like that. But
no, no,
we
I
can
totally agree.
we can have conversations on future episodes about,
Oh no, I mean
how
it's fun
crazy
to
it is.
entertain, but I totally agree because I can't see
There's too
the
much money
NFL
involved
scripting.
for NFL to
Oh, for
go,
sure.
no, there's
But
no
really, the
way.
big thing for me is like, how do you script like big plays? Honestly, right off the top of my head is something like, how do you script something like Odell Beckham catching that ball one-handed over his head in the end zone?
Yeah.
You can't script that. You know what I mean? And in all honesty, it's like even if you were like, okay, like on this play, I don't know, T Higgins is going to get like a 40-yard reception. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, well, he still has to catch that ball.
And my thing is, if they have
Burrow
teams
still has
they
to
need
throw
to
him that ball. Like
if
it
they have
just it goes
teams
this way.
they need to, for financial reasons to be in certain situations, why wouldn't they have the Cowboys in more Super Bowls? Ratings
Right?
galore. You
Yeah.
think the Chiefs and Taylor Swift versus the Dallas Cowboys in their first Super Bowl in almost 3 decades? You don't think that's gonna, be the biggest ratings of
Sell
all
out.
time?
Yeah. Oh man.
I can buy that they wanted the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. I'm sure the NFL has its favorites like Taylor Swift.
Sure.
You know, we're gonna hear. I bet you there's gonna be things you can bet on in Vegas. Like, is Taylor Swift gonna
How
be at
many
the game?
times they
First of
show
all, how
Taylor
many
Swift
times they're
on
gonna
that? Yeah.
show Taylor Swift? We've heard rumors about Kelsey retiring. Is he gonna propose to Taylor Swift if they win or whatever?
Man.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Um, there's so much going into this. I can't buy that it's scripted, but
Right.
I like
But I
the
mean, it's
conversation, the
still entertaining
controversy.
to talk about. Conspiracy theories are always fun to talk about.
Yeah, because they'll say, well, it makes
Get the brain
sense, but
working.
they always make sense. That's what makes a
Right.
conspiracy theory
Right.
popular. It makes sense. But no logo controversy. We might talk about that a little bit in the pregame show if we have time, because
Yeah.
it goes deeper than you think. It's like almost every
Yeah. Right.
single year. And really, if you point it out, I mean, it's not as crazy as you would think. I mean, how many color variations are there? Whereas
No,
we
that's what I
almost
was
had
gonna
two
say.
different,
Yeah.
like, it's not likely, but we almost had two different options that you could kind of say, look, see, red, blue, red, purple, whatever. That when you're talking
Yeah.
about red, purple, green, yellow, and blue or something, or orange.
Oh, if you were to use red and blue, you'd cover half the league.
Yeah. And like, I'm just saying it's easy to pick out things like that. Our minds are
Right. That's what I'm
designed to do
saying.
something like that. But,
Yeah.
not to blend, I'll have the conversation and I'll put my 2 cents in, but I'm not going to call you an idiot if you think
No,
there's
no. I mean,
something to
it's
it.
still fun. It's still fun though.
So Chiefs Ravens, what other than the Ravens just looking like they did not want to win that game, what stuck out to you at that game?
Man, Kansas City's defense really kind of dominated that whole game. Um, it started off well. Kansas City scored. Baltimore went down and scored right after. I honestly thought we were in for like a competitive game. Who would
Yeah.
have thought the Ravens wouldn't score another touchdown? Um, the Chiefs defense was able to just disrupt Lamar Jackson enough in the backfield that he wasn't able to really get any rhythm going. He didn't run as much as I thought he should have. He should have been scrambling more, to
Yeah.
be honest. And then, man, the biggest mistakes I think that really like set the Ravens on their downhill, and then they just kind of quit after that. Zay Flowers making those enormous rookie mistakes, like man, you make a 30-yard play and it gets called back 15 yards because you got to stand over Snead and flex on him and spin the
Yeah.
ball on his chest and everything. That was so foolish. And then, you follow that up by, you know, honestly, I just thought he got greedy because he made the big play and caught the ball at the 1-2 yard line.
Yeah.
And then he tries to stretch it out over the goal line. It was like,
Yeah.
man, you didn't have to do that. That was
Yeah,
unnecessary.
and it
You
was
already made the big play.
there was like 10 minutes left in the game or something, maybe even more. Like
Yeah.
it wasn't anywhere near the
Yeah.
end of the game. I know they were down 2 possessions, but yeah, that was that.
No, but they needed that touchdown.
They needed
And
it, but it was like I don't even remember the situation, but that was a big play, so it was already going to be first and goal. To your
no, yeah, that's what I'm saying.
to
But
your
it was
point, he
right
was very
after he had.
greedy. Yeah, and
Yeah,
then
it was right after he flexed on Snead, and man, that must I assume it lit something in Snead because he's the one that forced that fumble after that.
yeah, something in
But it
Flowers
just
too, where
it
he's like,
seemed
okay, I
greedy.
have to score this touchdown, I have to make up for that,
Yeah,
which he was kind of the most of the offense. Like
he really
he
was.
was he was most of the yardage of the offense.
Yeah, but between
Said that really
Lamar's
weird. Yeah,
fumble and his fumble, it
yeah, he
just
fumbled
you
at the
know
one, and then the next, I guess it was the very next drive, they drive down again, and then Lamar throws the pick in the end zone, and that's what
yeah
I thought it was game. I texted you and Chris and said that's
yeah
game, and then it
yeah
looked like they almost had another chance to do it. So it's like
yeah
Kansas
almost.
City
I
just
mean,
kind of stopped stop their offense in the second half.
honestly, it seemed like their defense was exhausted by that point, and I mean, once kind of Lamar and the Ravens got their offense going a little bit, it was late in the third, and it was finally the fourth quarter. But they kept making those mistakes,
Yeah,
with Flowers and the interception and everything. And honestly, man, I expected this game to be a little more competitive than what it really was. To be honest, I mean, Kansas City wins 17-10, but 3 points were scored in the second half. I mean, that second half was boring. It was slow. It was well, I take it back. I guess the excitement came from really the turnovers from the Ravens' opportunities. Um, but it just ended up making it Kansas City's game by the time it's late in the fourth, and like you said, he threw that interception. It was pretty much all she wrote at that point, which is so annoying to me, man. I mean, I was saying it last week, and I mean, when you're a really good football team, when you're a really good player, you draw as many fans as you do haters. And I feel like I've been just rooting against the Chiefs. Honestly, I feel like I'm
yeah,
just tired of seeing them all the time. But man, Mahomes and Travis Kelsey, like, were just on fire. Kelsey was 11 for 11 with 116 yards. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Like,
11 targets,
just
yeah,
on
11
fire.
catches, a touch,
And he set
I mean,
a
a great
new
touchdown as well.
postseason reception record over Jerry Rice,
Yeah,
which is great company to be in. Like, now you're the leading receiver for postseason games. That's
yeah.
insane.
Jerry Rice, I mean,
Um,
he just has like every receiving record, it seems like, and being
right?
a
Yeah.
tight end, and I mean, it just shows you how long the Chiefs have been up there.
Right. And I
Going
mean, what an
to
incredible
another AFC
10
Championship
seasons
game.
for Travis and everything. Just honestly, Travis Kelsey, Patrick Mahomes, and Andy Reid are just an offensive marriage that is perfect. Like
Yeah, it
it's hard to compete with that offense.
it was interesting for me to watch the game. I pretty much had my own opinions, no commentators to sway that because I was in Cancun and for the life of me couldn't find the English version of that broadcast. So I listened to it in Spanish. And it was fine. I didn't have to
very
mute it or
cultural.
anything. Yeah, I know. I mean, that's me, cultural,
Yeah,
and they were
immerse yourself in.
uh yeah, it wasn't that as much as like I thought I was gonna have to mute
Yeah,
it. I'm like, it's not that bad. They Spanish speaking announcers get really excited, and we all know that from
yeah, right. Yeah,
watching soccer. But yeah, it was like in the second half. I agree with you. I thought it was gonna just be a back and forth shootout, and then the second half, the Chiefs offense couldn't do much, and their defense wasn't really shutting them down. I thought they were doing a great job for as much as they were on the field exhausted. But the Ravens kind of just drove down the field, not very quickly, but they would make good drives, and then all of a sudden, balls fumbled. They just
yeah,
waited, and then they intercepted on the next play. It was kind of like that bend but don't break. You just had to get that timely
yeah.
interception. But
No, and the Ravens were getting what they got like 3 or 4 like big plays out of
yeah,
Kansas City's defense. And Kansas City's defense they gave up the least big plays per
yeah,
game. So I mean the Ravens were definitely working them there, especially in that second half, but they just couldn't finish.
yeah. I think it was a big upset. Lamar just had a terrible game. I know he threw a lot of yards in the second half, it make it look more respectable, but it just seemed like he
Yeah,
wasn't.
he still had like 200 and
Yeah,
something yards
a couple of bad
throwing,
picks
but
too. It was
yeah,
very. I know a lot of people are making the comparison to Dak, um, of his playoff performance because he should have. They were favored. They should have got in there, but the Chiefs. As much as you talk about Patrick Mahomes before this year, never played a road playoff game, and now he just won two in really stellar fashion in
yeah,
Buffalo.
yeah,
Hard place to play. In Baltimore, another hard place to play against two really talented teams.
yeah, man.
And
Oh, I as much as I want to hate them, they played such a great game, and I mean I really thought the Ravens had a real opportunity to win it, but
they
they just
seemed
couldn't
like they
put
had
it
a
together.
lot of opportunities. It's almost like
By the end
they
of it, it felt
played
like they were
better in the
phoning it
second
in.
half. They just
Yeah,
couldn't finish it.
yeah, and then it was like after not being able to finish a couple of times, I mean honestly, it seemed like the team was kind of giving up and everything. They even got a few like really silly penalties, real close to the end of the game and everything. That what was it, the defensive offsides or whatever, where he just
Yeah,
flew over the offensive
I
lineman. It was like there's
think
no
yeah, I
need for
think what
that.
he was trying to do there by looking at comments, like I said, I watched it in Spanish, but it was like
Yeah,
they had the timeout, so it was 1st and 5, so it's like they're not in field goal range, they're not even close yet. So just let's reset it to 1st and 10. I think that was their thinking. Jump off sides, uh, get it to 1st and 10. Sorry, my phone's ringing right in the middle of this political call. Definitely not going to answer that.
yeah,
But anyways, so rather than trying to stop them 3 times with 5 yards to go and wasting a timeout if they stop them on first down, it's jump off sides, give them 5 yards, make it 1st and 10. But they were just a little too aggressive and got the. I mean, they got what they wanted. They got to 1st and 10, but gave up 15 yards,
yeah,
and that. I mean, that's a big break for your defense when it just kind of your mentality there just kind of resets where there's not a great chance we're gonna stop you 3 times and everything has to work out perfectly, and that just kind of ruined it. Within reality, it was just 10 more yards, but
yeah,
yeah, you never bet
yeah.
against it. And
Tough,
then the
tough loss.
Chiefs, and then Patrick Mahomes just dropped back and threw a dime down the middle of the field to end the game.
Oh yeah, hit the oil company uh, right over the middle too, man. It was a nice pass
Yeah, ballsy
to just
play,
put it
but
all
that's,
away.
I mean,
Yeah,
Andy
great play
Reid,
call, honestly,
Andy
because
Reid will
I
do
didn't
stuff like
I
that.
didn't put him on I didn't put him on a pass
Yeah,
for that play. I expected him to just run the ball again, but uh, but yeah, man, he dropped a dime right there to Valdez Scantling, and that's all she wrote, man. That was done. It was. I mean, honestly, it was a pretty good game. I mean, I wish it would have been a little closer, a little more competitive. I always like lead changes and stuff, especially in
yeah,
championship games and whatnot. But all in all, I mean, as much as I hate them, I got to give credit where credit's due. Kansas City's really like put it together. Honestly, they haven't looked better all season. Like they're playing some of their best football right now. It's hard to bet against them.
yeah. No, absolutely. The Chiefs this past, 6 years, and maybe it'll go longer. We'll have to see. On the other side of the NFC, which I did not get a chance to watch most of this game, we had, like I said, we were in Cancun. We had dinner and a show, and I kept checking my phone, and I'm just like, yeah, the Lions are dominating. I do not want the 49ers to win this game. And then I look down, it's tied. I'm like, holy crap. And then by the time I get back to our room, it's the 49ers are winning. And funny enough, I found the English version of this one. So I actually got to watch the last half quarter or whatever in English for that game. But, I'm trying to say like what a choke job. But again, I didn't see how they came back. Because the Lions didn't seem like they were playing bad after that. They just weren't
Honestly,
getting it done.
yeah, honestly, I think Detroit lost this game more than like the 49ers won it. Um, I mean, like honestly, like you said, I
Bad
even
late
wrote
game
these
calls
stats
by
down.
Dan Campbell. I mean, as much as Dan
Yeah,
Campbell has done,
and it wasn't even necessarily a late play calls and whatever. This is the stat I want to talk about, right?
yeah,
Detroit first half, 21 carries, 148 yards, 3 touchdowns, 3 different guys: Gibbs, Williams, and Montgomery, right? Second half, 8 carries, 34 yards.
yeah,
What happened? Like you were running the ball, and I mean, if you're running the ball like that, I mean, just as a football coach, as a football like old school as purist, whatever, it's like running the ball is the first step. You
yeah,
run the ball to open up the pass, to open up the play action, and it's like, but my thing has always been the same, and I'll die on this hill, man. If you go out there and you start trying to execute the run and they can't stop the run, guess what? You don't need to move on to pass.
yeah,
You don't need to move on to that second part because they can't stop the run. When they start to stop the run, you move on to passing and then you move on to play action. But you don't have to do that until they stop the run. And like the 49ers were just getting moved around that first half, like Detroit was playing really, really well, just running the ball. And I just don't understand why they decided to like abandon that. It was 24-7 halftime. And I mean, don't get me wrong, Brock Purdy played incredible. Like Mr. Irrelevant who, like this guy's playing incredible football and leading the 49ers in, now 2 fourth quarter comebacks, Green Bay last week and Detroit this week. But like, man, like the fact that you gave up on the run and then you have these two fourth down conversions that you failed to convert, both in field goal range. Um, like I just, and as much as I like MCDC, I'm having trouble like being on his side and trying to defend him on this one.
yeah, yeah.
Like
There,
that's a coaching bulk in
yeah,
my
there
opinion.
are a lot of stats that you look at where you can say run or pass yards or whatever, and be like, this is why they won or why they lost, and sometimes they're misleading. Like you'll see quarterbacks of teams who aren't doing well with a ton of passing yards, maybe leading the league, and then you're like, well, they're passing because they're down by so many. But in this case,
Yeah,
there's no reason to stop running. At no point were you out of this game until the like the very end where you were trying to
right.
come back. So it wasn't like you had to go away from the run because they came back or anything. Um, what the late things I was talking about is I'm I'm fine with you when it was like third and goal. I'm fine with you running on that play. If you would have scored,
Sure.
you would have looked like a genius. Whatever. It didn't work out. It didn't work out. But the situation when you ran, it forced you to use a timeout. At that point, it doesn't matter what you do. You score or not or whatever. You have to get an onside kick. And I'm never in favor of you forcing. When you have an opportunity, just score. You have your 3 timeouts. You just have to stop them once. I mean, the 3 times. You just have to stop them. Just don't let them get a first down. Now we can say they should have kicked a field goal earlier. Like when they got in a field goal range, kick a field goal because they were down 10. You just kick a field goal, then you leave yourself a little bit of time.
Right.
Because if you don't stop them anyways, you're going to lose. Uh, I wasn't that strict on it, but once you got in field goal range, my thinking was don't waste any time. Take 3 shots at the end zone right now. And if you don't get it, you don't get to kick a field goal. You're down by 7. You still have 3 timeouts. And then they went for it on fourth down, which I thought was a mistake. They ended up getting it and it looking looking good. But I'm thinking, if you don't get this, the game is over because now you only have
Yeah.
2 timeouts. I guess, they could have been saying, well, the 49ers had the ball on the 1 yard line, 2 yard line, whatever they were at. if you don't get it, but still, you're relying on a safety, then it's still a 2-possession game, and
Yeah.
I feel like he had a lot of different things going on in his head, and I've never been a coach in football at any high level, so I don't know. I'm not gonna say I'm make any decision better, but in the moment, I was thinking, don't do that, don't run. Like they were talking about, maybe he's gonna run. It's like, well, don't run, because if you don't get it, you almost have to use a timeout or
Yeah.
let 20 seconds run off, because as you saw, 49ers get you
Yeah.
down.
Just
The
to
guys are
reset.
just going to lay
Yeah.
on the ground. Like you
Yeah.
can say, well, you're all right there. Just get up real quick, spike the ball. But why would you tackle them? They know, the players know, just lay down, lay on these guys. They're not going to throw a flag, just kind
Yeah.
of
Right. Take your
waste,
time getting that.
waste a
Like,
few seconds.
no rush.
Uh,
Not for you anyway. I mean, the offense is in a rush, but like you're not.
but yeah, but to your point, they should have never really been in that situation. You're up 24-7. You should never lose a game when you're up 24-7.
Yeah, I just
Later
didn't
in the game, in
understand
the
why in
second
that
half,
third quarter
why do you change?
they
You don't need
abandoned
to
the run.
adjust
Yeah.
anything. Yeah, you're scoring fine. Your defense is fine.
Yeah, and that's not even to say that like Goff was playing bad or anything. I mean, he was throwing the ball just fine. He threw for 270 something in the end. But man, you were running all over him, and I mean, like I'm just looking at this: 24 points in the first half on 21 carries, 148 yards, 3 touchdowns. 8 carries, 34 yards. You scored 8 touchdowns in that second half. Like I'm just, I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's like red herring, or like I'm just, making excuses here and tying things together that don't belong to be tied together. But that seems like a pretty big one to me. Like, oh, your offense was really clicking and you were running the ball and you scored a lot, and then why'd you give that up in the
Yeah.
second half? It just doesn't. Honestly, I think the reason it upsets me the most too is because I actually think I picked the right teams to go to the Super Bowl, the Lions and the Ravens, and I feel like they both just kind of
Yeah,
screwed
they
it up
both had,
themselves,
yeah,
and
in
ruined their
different,
opportunities
in different ways,
in
and
different ways, very
different
different
ways.
ways. But yeah,
Because it was all working. The 49ers, they just had to hold that lead, and a lot of times when you don't play to win, you play not to lose. It's almost more difficult to play when you're ahead than when you're behind. Because when you're behind, like, you don't have a lot to lose. You're just kind of playing around. But when you're ahead, you're like, crap, this might work. We might actually do this. And, in that situation, to take the Lions to their first Super Bowl, and, well, the first Super Bowl ever, but their first, championship game in a long time, in a game that you were not favored. This team has been rolling over everybody else, that you have to know how to hold that lead and how to. And I think he panicked and didn't, instead of sticking to the run and what they've been doing well, they, tried to change it up, because I guess in their mind they assumed the 49ers are now going to adjust to the run. So now we're going to switch it up on them, and it just didn't, it didn't work out for them. And then
yeah,
the
I mean,
Ravens
honestly,
standpoint, they had plenty of opportunities to come back in that game.
yeah, I mean, honestly, with Dan Campbell, it just makes me feel like pretty much like you said, like they were. It feels like this new kind of like, I don't even necessarily want to call it like a generational thing, but it feels like
Yeah.
kind of the way coaching has evolved a little bit, in the sense that it's like normally you would have this situation where, say, let's say you're on the 3 yard line, it's like second and goal, and it's like, traditionally that's kind of a run situation. You would normally run the ball, and it seems like coaching, mentality thinking
Especially
now
after you
is
pass on
like,
first and
oh, since
second.
they know we're gonna
Yeah,
run
you
the ball
pass on
here, we
first
should
and
throw it.
second. That
Yeah, and
in
I
most
just don't
situations,
agree with it. But
yeah, in most situations when you're on the goal line, I feel if you pass on first and second, it doesn't work. You would run, but I mean, the clock is a situation there. I know it's short, and they're probably expecting. I mean, more times than not, I know they're not saying it's going to be a pass no matter what, but it's expected that they're going to pass because of the clock. If they, the run and don't get it, they'll have to use a timeout,
yeah,
which in that situation is bad.
right.
But yeah, a lot of it, in those situations, I don't know if you can judge. I mean, hindsight's 2020, and but it did seem like a very coach thing to do, like you were saying. Like, this is just what you're supposed to
Yeah,
do. Change things up.
yeah, and I mean,
Third and
I,
goal, short, just run it in. We tried passing, didn't
Yeah.
work.
I mean, I like MCDC's like aggressive like play style and everything. Because honestly, like when we were talking about it, and going for the 2-point conversion against the Cowboys, and the fact that he did it, was it 3 times in a row, 4 times in a row,
3 times.
3 times in a row. Like that's ballsy. That's pretty ballsy to go for it, because I can totally understand going for it like the first time and you miss and then you just kick the PAT, or even going for it twice and you kick the PAT. Going for it 3 times is ballsy. But man, the decision to not kick these field goals on fourth down, you
Yeah.
know, the like you're saying, the decision to run the ball with such little time and so close to the
Yeah,
goal
you
line and
you
everything,
take
man.
one of
Like
those away, and it seems like it could have been a different game because you
very,
throw
very
it,
much
even
so.
if you miss it, you kick the field goal. You're still in the same situation. It's a one possession game, but you have all 3 of your timeouts. Who knows? You don't have to. You could try the onside kick C, but you don't have to rely on it. You kick one of those field
Right.
goals, it's a different game because, like, I know you can't just change something in the middle of the game and everything else turn out like it did turn out. I understand that. Like, you can't say you kicked a field goal in the first quarter, it's 3 more points because things changed. But and it wasn't. It was in the second half. But you kick one of those field
Right.
goals. Let's say now it's a 7-point game. So now you're going to tie the game. You're going for it to tie the game or whatever. You make both of the field goals. It's a field goal to win the game, or well, a touchdown to win the game.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's just lots of stuff, and of course you're not going to let Dan Campbell go. I mean, he turned this
No, I
franchise
don't think
around
he's
in
going
2
anywhere.
seasons. There's no way. It's just
Absolutely. Yeah.
you hope when you have to go through situations like this, bad losses or bad collapses where the other team comes back, that they learn from that and it doesn't, because now we've seen it twice where yeah, they got screwed one way or the other against the Cowboys, but it's not as cut and dry as you would have thought. But after that
Yeah.
happened and you get pushed back because it was a penalty, you decide not to kick the field goal. And then Micah Parsons jumps off sides after he throws the interception. Like, that's the thing. Okay, you try it twice and it didn't work twice. That's when you're like, okay, but I guess they moved back up. They're like, okay, let's try this again. No, just kick the field goal. Take it to overtime. They had the Cowboys numbers that game. Cowboys number that game. And then it's just these 2 games. Other than that, he's done a great job, and
No, it's been amazing to watch the Lions come from
they have
where
a
they've
lot. They
been.
have a
I
lot
mean,
of cap
from an
space too,
0
so
and
they're not going anywhere.
16 team like 10 years ago,
Yeah,
and absolutely, with John Kintna as their quarterback and not a single win, to, like arguably Super Bowl contenders. I mean, these guys.
trading away your greatest franchise. Well, maybe not greatest modern franchise quarterback in Matt Stafford, and watching him
Yeah.
go win the Super Bowl the very next year, and then you have Jared Goff, and he's able to take your team to the NFC Championship game and should have taken them to the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And then
I
who
totally agree
knows?
with that. Yeah. So I mean, good luck to them next year. Hopefully, they kind of work out some of these aggressive call kinks and whatnot, and figure out when's the best time to actually make these play decisions and whatnot. But I mean, a big heartbreaker for Detroit, to be honest. But Niners Chiefs, here we come.
Yeah, and we talked a lot longer about that than I thought we'd be able to. We did a great job, and we were going to talk a lot about quarterback contracts and what might happen, but we may save that for a show here in a couple of weeks, because after the Super Bowl, we're gonna start talking basketball or hockey
Yeah. No, I
or
mean, as it
baseball.
stands right now, there's only a couple of guys headed for free agency, and
Yeah,
there's more speculation
a
given
lot of
another
teams
week or
that
so.
will give extensions out. But let's talk about these coaches that are left, because there's some pretty surprising names that have not been on that are not signed to an NFL team yet. A
Yeah,
couple.
we've got
Go
got
ahead.
3 major head coaches still available in Belichick, Pete Carroll, and Mike Vrabel, which surprises me because
Yeah,
we've only got
Pete.
2 head coach openings
Yeah,
left in the league
Pete
in
Carroll.
Seattle and Washington.
Yeah, and I think Pete Carroll will probably just stay in the front office. I know he's technically still part of the team, but he was looking around to possibly make a change. I think he'll probably be one of I mean, say odd man out, like the other 2 have to go. I mean, there's lots of other options. Um, out there, but I think Belichick is a big surprise because it looked like he was going to go to the Falcons, and for a little bit probably the Cowboys. Although the Cowboys, weren't really interested in letting McCarthy go.
Yeah. Honestly, it makes me wonder just because, like you were saying, I thought Atlanta was probably the best landing spot for Belichick.
Yeah,
And then they seem to move pretty quick in hiring their new head coach. I can't quite think of who it was that they picked up, but
yeah.
uh,
Um,
they took care of that pretty quick because I feel like they interviewed and hired him within a week.
so
Um, and
I,
it makes me wonder, like Belichick maybe retiring.
maybe. I think he probably wants more control than
Yeah, for
they
sure.
might let him. I mean, because you saw the GM part of Belichick not do very great the last few years, not do very well
Right.
with the quarterbacks that they. I mean, it's just terrible pick. I mean, of course, at the time they don't look like terrible picks, but I thought Mac
Sure.
Jones wasn't a great pick as high as he went. Um, then you saw Zappy do pretty decent in a couple of games while Jones was hurt, and then he just kind of went out nowhere. I mean, of course, he
Yeah.
before that Cam Newton was going there, and it just wasn't working out. That I think Belichick's I don't know about his legacy, but his his reputation might have taken a little bit of hit seeing Brady go and succeed, and
Yeah.
then it's like it's pretty
It's
obvious
a
it was
pretty
Brady, not
sour
Belichick.
note.
Yeah, not that it throw like I said, not his legacy is tarnished or anything. Like you have to be a talented coach. I don't care for Tom Brady in any roster, you're not necessarily going to win a
Yeah.
Super Bowl, but um, I think it did hurt him a little bit where he hadn't been able to get the Patriots back. They've just been trending downward since Brady left, and Brady goes and has success, and um, I think Belichick just doesn't want to be a coach. He wants, not necessarily to be the GM, but have a lot of power. And some teams don't necessarily want to bring that in, and then there's all kinds of arguments and controversies over player personnel and draft picks and
Yeah.
things of that nature.
No, I totally agree. I think Belichick's definitely one of those guys. And I mean, to be completely honest, I think he's earned it. But I
Yeah,
agree. I think there's a lot of coaches that come in different teams wanting different levels of control over the team, whether that's, ad dropping personnel, whether that's, having a certain percent of the vote when it comes to drafting guys and whatever. Um, but I definitely think Belichick wants to be like heavily involved in those aspects of the team and not just in the coaching. I
yeah,
think he wants to say in who's on the roster, and not just in like the final cuts of the roster, but like who they bring in at all. Like whoever is gonna audition or try out for the team. I think he wants say in who visits his house. Um, I don't know that he's gonna get that out of Seattle or Washington. Um, Honestly, I think the best bet that he
well,
would have would
Seattle just
probably
signed
be
their head
Washington,
coach
looking
too.
to.
Seattle just signed their head coach too. Um,
Oh, that's right. I did. Yeah,
yeah,
I just saw that
and
they're
yeah, I
getting
don't
ready
think
to
there's
announce
any
that.
chance now he goes to Washington just because there aren't any rumors about it. I don't know that it's necessarily
Honestly,
a
as much
bad
control
fit.
as Washington might give him, I just I don't know that they have what they would like, what Belichick would like need to succeed. You know
Yeah,
what I mean? Like I think they need to do some more building before you could really do something really successful with that team, and it's going to take at least probably two
yeah,
seasons to get to
because
that point.
I think Belichick, at least I don't necessarily know he's come out and said it, but it seems he's looking for a talented team that was underachieving. That's why I
Yeah,
thought the Cowboys might. I don't necessarily. It's not fantasy football where you just
yeah, that would
plug
be
in whatever, but that's why the Falcons were. I mean, they have some talent. They haven't done really great, but I didn't expect him to go like to Washington or a bottom feeder. I mean, he's up there in age. I
right.
don't know in his mind how long he wants to coach, but I can't imagine him really wanting to rebuild a team for 3 to 5 years.
Right. Spending all that time. Because honestly, I totally agree with you in the sense that like it honestly feels like Belichick might have retired even already if like Brady would have stayed in New England a little longer, whatever was going on there. But I definitely think like Brady left, and it kind of showed that it wasn't just Belichick's system; it
Yeah.
was Brady's, tenacity and grit and intelligence, and I mean everything about him. He's the goat. That really helped elevate New England to the uh, tyrant that they were during that 10-year period or whatever.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
ultimately, I think it puts a kind of
yeah.
a sour taste in Belichick's mouth, and he doesn't want to go out on these losing
Yeah.
seasons that he's just had the last 3-4 years. I think he wants, like you're saying, like to find that team that basically just needs a little
Because
lift up,
it,
and
it's
yeah,
not as simple as saying it was Brady, not Belichick. It was a combination of both. And Brady went into a good
agreed,
situation, brought
agreed.
talent with him. And when you lose your Hall of Fame quarterback, and then you're going to these subpar, you're in that what that zone of in between quarterbacks where you're just hoping your draft picks hit. You're going on retreaded quarterbacks like Cam Newton,
Yeah,
and hoping you can pull some of his success out. Uh, and really they didn't do terrible the first few years. They were made the playoffs one year, and the couple of years they were kind of
sure.
into it, and then this year they would they win like 2 or 3 games. Um, it's not that simple, but yeah, it does show where Brady can just go to a different team that he specifically picked out for that reason. You put Brady on Washington, it wouldn't have turned out the same way, but he goes out into the sunset, wins, plays them their 3 years, makes the playoffs 3 years, wins the Super Bowl, and it's the opposite for Belichick, pretty much. Um, I think, and Vrabel might be another case of this where I'm surprised he didn't get a job. I thought he was kind of the top of the
Yeah,
list.
me
Same as
too.
Dan Quinn. I mean, I think he was looking to move on. Like he's fine staying where he's at, but he wanted to.
That one also really surprises me. I can't believe, like, I mean, he's been a top candidate and
Yeah,
interviewing with like all the teams and
and,
everything, but
and
like now
one
he's
in one
wow.
game, it's like
I'd
I
love to
think
see him
it's
stay
starting to
with Dallas, to be
wear
honest,
off.
but
Where I'm fine keeping Dan Quinn. Like really, it was one game. It is what it is. He made a mistake going to
yeah,
zone when they've been playing man all year. It is what it is. I don't think that game stopped it. But what I think's happening is we're seeing this transition, as where we saw with questionable calls we talked about earlier with the Lions, and the NFL is just going to a younger coach where they're getting
yeah,
less and less power within the organization. And then of course Andy Reid's still winning and winning and winning, but looking
right.
at all these different the 49ers, the Packers, the Rams, like everyone's having success with these younger coaches, new schemes, and that's all they're doing is coaching. They're not, they're
Right.
coming from these same coaching trees, and I think you're seeing a transition in the league where, um, it's a different type of game now, and
Oh, I
I
agree.
think a lot
I
of
agree.
coaches aren't transitioning as quickly as they would like. They're using, hey, this is what works, and um, I think when we were talking about Dan Quinn is kind of the same way. He got outsmarted by LaFleur, um,
Yeah.
and whether it was his fault or not, did he lose that game for that, or did that defense just do terrible, or did the offense just take care of business? A little bit of both, but I think where the thing with Belichick is the team has to give up. I think has to give up control for 3 to 5 years to bring him in, and maybe that sets them up great for the future. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe it just kind of takes on that, because you're not getting these terrible teams, these bottom feeders that say, what the hell, why not try it and see if you can set it up. You're getting these teams that are kind of on the cusp, thinking they're pretty close. I mean, the Falcons were close to making the playoffs just because they play in a bad division, but when you're kind
Yeah.
of in that middle of the road, you're like, hey, we get the right quarterback, we have a great offseason that puts us right in the driver's seat. We don't have room to take these kinds of risks. And I think it was a combination of Belichick not willing to go to a really crappy team, and these teams not wanting to give up too much control is why he's available, and really wanting a younger coach as well.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Like when you definitely have like those middle of the road teams or those teams that like just missed the playoffs
You're
or
living
even
in
like lost in like
purgatory,
that
not
first
getting good
round.
draft
Yeah,
picks,
I
but
think
not
it's so
losing,
easy
not winning.
for fans, for coaches, for the GMs, for everybody to be like, we're one player away or we're one coach away. It's like, man,
We
if we
know
had
that
the right running back, if we
better
had the
than
right
anybody as
quarterback, yeah,
Cowboys fans, where
yeah,
in the last 25 years they've only had a couple of losing seasons because Romo's gone down or Dak has gone down. Where they're winning 8, 9, 10, even 12 games. They're right there. They're not bottom feeders. But then we're always picking in the 20s in the first round, and when we don't, we get Zeke
yeah,
at number 4, we get Mike at number 11, I think. I mean, when you get
yeah,
those good draft picks, that's like sometimes it helps those teams to, I know we're getting on a different subject, but
right,
being in the middle of the road, you have a choice. Like sometimes it'll work out, like the Steelers are able to do it and have winning seasons every year if you nail the draft. But it's you have to go one way or the other. Every team in the middle feels like, hey, we're just right there. We got to do this, do that. I think we can make a run, um, which are probably closer to winning 3 or 4 games and having a top 5 pick than winning a Super Bowl.
yeah, man, oh man, it just
I
it
didn't
feels
mean to
it
hit a
feels like
nerve
that's
there talking
always
about
the.
the Cowboys.
No, no, you're good. No, you're good. But I mean, that's exactly how it feels. Like every year for the Cowboys, it feels like we've always been like that middle of the road, middle upper class, and we're just that one player away. And I know that's how other teams and
Yeah,
everybody in the offseason feels. And I mean, not to mention the fact that you also have players that come and go in the offseason as well. And so you're looking to kind of replace those guys or at least fill in that
you
gap a
have to
little bit
pay
because you
pay
always
quarterback if the quarterbacks play well. Like you always want your quarterback to play well, but
right.
at the same
Well, I
time,
mean,
in
and it's not,
3 years you got
but
to give
like
them a contract.
you might also need like your coach to kind of revamp your offense because you lost a certain player. Now you need to work your offense a little bit differently or your defense or, whatever it is. You lost an edge rusher. And so now you got to scheme a little bit differently. And, so everybody just always kind of feels like, man, we're just like that one player away. And
Or that one
every year,
coach.
I feel like I've been doing that for like 30 years now, with the Cowboys. I'm like, please just, I know we're so close. Can we just do it one time? Just one time, please.
Yeah. Back to Belichick and the Falcons. I don't, I have no idea if he wanted too much money or whatever. But if he was just going to be a coach, like,
Yeah, I don't know.
why wouldn't the Falcons just do it? I mean, that seems to be the coaching turnover nowadays. 3, 4, 5, 6 years. Uh, whereas, hey, just let him be our coach. Let him coach the team we're putting down. Uh, I just think Belichick wants the power. That's why I
Yeah,
would
no, I
probably never
totally
work in
agree.
Dallas.
And
I
I
don't
mean,
think they'd be able to coexist, Jerry Jones and Bill Belichick.
no,
Um,
I said the same thing. Yeah,
yeah, and
and I
maybe
mean that
Belichick takes a
that's
year
honestly
off and
why.
comes back next year.
Yeah, that's honestly why I was saying like maybe Belichick retires. Maybe he does take a year off or two. He holes up in his football barn the way.
Well, you don't see him because we know Brady is going to be a Fox commentator now. You don't see Belichick doing anything like analyst because he just seems so dry when he talks. It's
Oh, for
like,
sure.
yeah, Belichick's not going to have a podcast anytime soon. I mean, if he wants one, we would gladly offer him a
I
spot to
would
be a
listen. I mean,
podcast, but he
yeah,
just seems very dry. And maybe that's just him being a coach in the National Football League. Maybe like he gets out of that, he
yeah,
can talk. You don't see many videos of Belichick having a beer with anybody else. I'm sure it happens, and maybe he just shoot the shit. He's really cool and has a great personality, but it just seems uh, it seems that like CBS or Fox aren't going to try to get him as an analyst or anything like that anytime soon.
no. I mean, honestly, even if they did offer it to him, I don't necessarily see him taking on that kind of role. It just doesn't
No.
strike me as his kind of thing. But um,
I saw
man,
somebody
but I
say
mean,
he should go to college
almost end of
football,
an
and I
era.
thought that was, I mean, somebody might let him be a college coach. I have no
I mean, honestly,
idea.
maybe. I don't know what his ambitions are as far as continuing to coach and all that.
Yeah.
I mean,
I don't know what would take
it
more. It
would
seems
honestly
like
be
being a
crazy. I
college
mean,
coach would take a lot
I mean,
more
I'm
effort, but
sure it does, but.
That's for a different show. We don't
Saban
need to
managed.
But guys, we're almost out of time. Thanks for tuning into this episode of the Sports Page. We'll be back next week talking Super Bowl and maybe some other stuff. Don't forget to subscribe and follow. And until next time, it's Dan. I'm Ashton. We'll see y'all later.
Bye, guys.